if I told you that the things you throw away could be the most beautiful part of your garden? This isn't a fairy tale. It's real. And in today's video, we're diving into trash, quite literally, and turning it into something magical for your backyard, patio, or tiny front yard. Welcome to Revive Nature, where junk gets a second chance, and your creativity becomes the blueprint. We've added timestamps, so feel free to skip ahead or explore what speaks to you. Got questions or ideas? Drop them in the comments. We read every word. And if this video sparks something in you, don't just watch, create. Don't just scroll, subscribe. Maybe I'm just another voice online. But behind these frames is a story, real people, real dreams. This isn't just content. It's a heartbeat. Every like, every comment, every subscribe, they fuel this little flame. When you tap that button, you're not boosting numbers. You're helping this small family keep creating, one idea at a time. Thanks for being here. Thanks for believing in the power of simple things. In the heart of a tiny patio where space whispers instead of shouts, a forgotten drum finds its second life. Once tossed behind a garage, rusted and forgotten, it now stands proudly, halved and painted in a coat of joy, soft blue, coral, sage. It no longer echoes with the hollow sound of emptiness, but overflows with blooms that speak of revival. Chrysanthemums burst like fireworks, marigolds glow like sunset, asters sway gently to the breeze. This is not just a drum, it is a divider of dull and dream. The garden is small. But here, small is not a limitation, it is intimacy. The drums define space like poetry written in metal and color. They form gentle boundaries without walls. Between one drum and the next, a secret path emerges, lined with fallen leaves and soft shadows. A bench waits in silence. Someone, someday, will sit here with a cup of warm tea, beneath the gaze of blooming sedum and the soft hum of bees. Near the bamboo fence, another drum sings a different song. Painted with hand-drawn vines and petals, it holds a miniature tree, its roots dancing with marigolds at the base. The scent of soil, the pop of color, and the shape of repurposed metal, each part tells a story of transformation. A junkyard discard, turned centerpiece of joy. This is the soul of DIY upcycling, not to merely reuse, but to reimagine. To look at a thing and see not what it was, but what it longs to become. In these painted drums, the patio becomes a canvas. Each divider is not just functional, but beautiful, a tribute to the art of resourceful living. A drum once filled with waste, now brims with life. And as the autumn air turns cooler and the flowers deepen in hue, the drums stay vibrant. They do not age as they once did. Because now, they have purpose. They bring delight. They make the garden whole. Behind every weathered fence lies a blank canvas. And here, in a yard no wider than a garden bench, discarded plastic bottles take center stage. Cut, cleaned, and gently repainted, they hang like a curtain, not to shield, but to celebrate. Their colors, soft as sea glass and just as treasured, sway in the breeze. Each bottle cradles a living aroma: thyme, mint, rosemary, herbs dancing between fragrance and function. This isn't just decoration. It's a vertical symphony. A bottle no longer destined for landfill becomes a cradle for life. Tied with jute string in cascading rows, they form a living curtain, fluttering with the weight of their harvest, shimmering under the dappled sunlight. As you pass by, you catch the earthy scent of basil brushing against an arm. The rustle of leaves is soft, familiar, like laughter in late autumn. Below, marigolds and asters smile in golden contrast, their roots grounded beneath this whimsical wall of bottles. The rhythm of color is intentional, but never forced. Pastel mint next to apricot, lavender beside sage. It feels like something a child might imagine, and a gardener might perfect. Near the pergola, one section gleams brighter than the rest, where droplets still cling after watering, catching sun like tiny prisms. Herbs peek through painted floral patterns as though they've grown into their own disguise. And behind it all, the fence, once just a barrier, becomes a gallery wall. It's quiet here, but not silent. Bees hum. The herbs move. Shadows flicker through the gaps, painting your patio floor with lace-like light. Each time you walk past, something has shifted, a flower more open, a bottle slightly tilted, a scent that wasn't there the day before. In this tiny garden, space becomes vertical. Waste becomes wonder. Function meets joy. And what was once trash now lives as both food and fragrance, a design that feeds the eyes, the spirit, and the body. The curtain doesn't close. It grows. In a quiet backyard, where the wind tells stories and the leaves applaud the changing season, a gazebo rises, not from marble or steel, but from the language of roots. Twisted, curved, imperfect, sculpted roots stand like guardians at each corner, embracing the structure in their raw and rugged grace. These aren't just branches reclaimed from the forest floor. They are memories carved by time, polished by rain, and honored by touch. Gently sanded and whitewashed, they still hold their earthy soul. Their twisted forms curl like tendrils, inviting vines to ascend. Clematis takes the invitation gladly. Japanese anemones bloom like stars against the rough texture. Chrysanthemums rest at their base like loyal companions. This is a corner of the garden where nature and art do not argue, they dance. The gazebo's floor is warm with worn wood. A soft cushion on a bench, a steaming mug on the side table. Above, a few dried vines hang like forgotten lace. But it's the roots that steal the gaze, how they rise and spiral, sculpted not by tools alone but by the rhythm of wind and time. From a distance, it feels ancient, as though it has always been here. As though the garden grew around it in gratitude. There are no walls, no glass, no rules, only open air, painted blooms, and organic lines. The root sculptures make the gazebo more than shelter, they make it story. Every knot and curl speaks of resilience. Every crack holds a breath of the wild. They are not perfect. They are true. Children think it's a fairy gate. Guests call it the living frame. Gardeners see inspiration in every joint. And birds? They simply perch and sing. As the evening chill begins to stir, the gazebo becomes a warm cradle. Lamps glow golden. Shadows stretch gently across petals. The roots, grounded yet reaching, continue to hold both the structure and the soul of the garden. In this small backyard, elegance is reclaimed. And art, once buried in the dirt, rises from the roots. Tucked in the corner of a small garden, between a fence of faded cedar and a trellis of climbing jasmine, a soft trickle of water breaks the stillness. It comes not from marble or steel, but from a series of humble clay kendi, vessels once used to pour, now chosen to flow. Each kendi is old but dignified. Some show cracks, others chipped rims, but all are painted with care, floral patterns in soft teal, sun-washed terracotta, and ivory cream. Stacked with intention, they lean into one another, creating a vertical river that kisses each curve before falling into the stone basin below. The sound is gentle, a murmur, not a roar. It draws you in like a whispered secret. Around it, the garden breathes. Chrysanthemums glow in burnt orange and rich burgundy. Marigolds cluster like golden suns. Sedum lays thick as a cushion near the water's edge. The fountain is alive, but slow. It doesn't rush. It encourages stillness, reflection. A bench nearby faces the fountain not for grand spectacle, but for quiet connection. A breeze catches the surface of the water. Ripples form in rhythm with birdsong and distant wind chimes. One of the jugs shimmers under the touch of morning light, droplets clinging to its lip like pearls before they fall. This is the kind of creation that doesn't shout for attention. It hums with presence. A wall once bare now offers movement. A garden once overlooked now becomes sacred. It's easy to forget how beauty often lies in the simplest things, in something handmade, repurposed, touched by time. These kendi, once filled with water for daily need, now pour it endlessly as a gift to the garden. Children call it a magic fountain. Gardeners see irrigation turned into art. Birds sip from the lowest basin. And when night falls, lanterns flicker nearby, their glow mirrored in the fountain's gentle pools. In this tiny space, tradition flows forward. A clay jug's old story becomes a new rhythm, and the garden listens. In a garden where space is treasured and every corner tells a tale, an old door opens into something new. Not a room, not a house, but a dream. Once forgotten in a shed, its paint peeling, its hinges creaking, the door now stands tall as a graceful arch in a tiny yard. With fresh pastel coats and flowers climbing up its side, it welcomes not people, but moments. This is the kind of beauty that only upcycling can offer, something worn, repurposed, made meaningful again. The door stands at the beginning of a gravel path. Chrysanthemums nod as you pass. Aster petals brush your ankles. The air is soft with the scent of sedum and freshly fallen leaves. It isn't just a structure. It's a threshold, from ordinary to magical. The garden arch feels like a secret waiting to be found. Through its weathered frame, sunlight filters just right. Behind it, the yard unfolds slowly, revealing patches of gold marigolds, hints of lavender, and a wooden bench where stories are often told over tea. Each door is different. Some have iron handles shaped like vines. Others have faded carvings or cracked windows now filled with moss and trailing blooms. What unites them is their transformation, from barriers to invitations. Children run through laughing. Adults pause with wonder. Gardeners take photos and dream of more doors, more arches, more magic. The beauty of it all lies in contrast, old wood and new life, rough textures and soft petals. The door carries its history proudly, yet it no longer hides or separates. It connects. In tiny yards, we learn to see the potential of every inch. And here, even an old door can become a portal to delight. It doesn't need hinges to open, it only needs eyes willing to see and hands willing to create. When dusk comes, lanterns are hung nearby. The garden glows in golden calm. The door arch becomes a silhouette against the soft bloom of fall. And still, it stands, weathered, renewed, and quietly perfect. Quietest part of the backyard, that overlooked corner where shadows meet sunlight, a new favorite spot is born from something old and industrial. A steel drum, once used for storage or transport, now offers rest, beauty, and purpose. Sliced open, softened with wood, and painted in gentle shades of autumn, it becomes a bench where stories begin and afternoons linger. The drum-turned seat fits perfectly beneath the overhang of a pergola. It doesn't try to dominate the space. It listens. Around it, chrysanthemums bloom in warm rust and butter yellow. Marigolds burst like sunshine against gravel paths. Sedum spills gently from nearby planters, their thick leaves echoing resilience and grace. There's something comforting about this contrast: hard steel and soft petals, cold metal and warm light. A faded blue cushion invites you to sit. Maybe you'll bring a book. Maybe a cup of tea. Or maybe you'll simply watch how the garden moves when you're still enough to see it. The bench isn't alone. A matching drum-painted cream sits beside it, holding potted asters. A pair of boots rests nearby, not posed, but lived in. A watering can leans, half full, catching morning light in its curve. In this rustic corner, nothing matches perfectly, yet everything belongs. The beauty of this creation is not only in its shape or color, but in its story. The drum was not melted down or thrown away. It was reimagined, transformed into a quiet companion. It supports not just the weight of a tired body, but of ideas, conversations, memories. Birds flutter above. Bees float lazily between blooms. And the bench waits, not for grandeur, but for presence. In the hands of those who see potential, junk becomes joy. In the eyes of those who appreciate simplicity, the corner becomes a sanctuary. And in the spirit of reuse, a drum becomes a seat where beauty rests and grows. Along the curved edge of a small garden bed, where flowers press forward like eager guests at a celebration, something unusual rises from the soil. Spirals, made not of marble, not of wood, but of plastic bottles, transformed from waste into wonder. Each bottle in the tower was once tossed aside, clear and forgettable. Now they stand proud, painted in a palette of soft pastels and earthy tones, rising in gentle twists like miniature sculptures. The spirals don't shout, they dance. Each one marks the boundary between gravel and bloom, between path and planting, between wild and designed. Fall flowers lean in as if curious. Marigolds, fiery and golden, kiss the edges. Asters peek through gaps like shy storytellers. Sedum, thick and low, winds itself at the base of the spiral towers, grounding the whimsy with quiet elegance. The bottles are arranged by hand, their caps secured, their shapes chosen for balance. Some are filled with sand for weight, others lit from within at dusk by solar lights that make the garden glow from below. Children trace the spirals with their fingers. Gardeners smile at the ingenuity. This is not perfection, it's poetry in motion. Plastic once destined for silence now forms a melody along the edge of life. It captures the light. It curves with grace. And it makes space feel curated yet alive. The spiral is a symbol of growth, of renewal. Fitting, then, that this shape rises from bottles reclaimed from consumption and given purpose. They no longer hold water, they hold attention. And as the wind picks up and leaves tumble across the stone path, the spirals stay firm. They are guardians of boundary and beauty, markers of imagination. Here in this tiny garden, where every inch matters, even the edge becomes art, and even trash becomes treasured. Along the soft edge where the lawn meets bloom, something ancient is reborn. Not from concrete or metal, but from the woods, weathered tree roots, once buried, now brought to light and woven into a graceful garden border. It's a line drawn not with rulers, but with rhythm. These roots do not pretend to be perfect. They twist, curve, split, and rejoin, like rivers frozen mid-flow. Cleaned gently and whitewashed with a touch of gray, they retain their story, of storms, of seasons, of soil. And now, they cradle a garden full of autumn joy. Behind this woven edge, the flowers rise. Marigolds in fiery gold, asters like purple constellations, sedum thick and fleshy like Earth's own lace. Together, they form a tapestry. The root border is the frame, rustic, raw, and deeply honest. There's a beauty here that can't be bought. A feeling that this space was loved into being. Each root was placed with care, overlapping and tucking in like a handmade braid. Where one knot emerges, a Japanese anemone stretches. Where a hollow appears, moss grows gently in its place. This border does more than divide space. It guides the eye. It sets the tone. It invites. Visitors pause to trace the lines with their gaze. Children run their fingers along the smooth and rough places. Gardeners smile, knowing they have not only reused, but rerouted nature in a new way. At dusk, the roots catch golden light. Their textures glow with warmth. The border, low and humble, becomes sculpture. A functional frame turned into natural art. The front yard feels more alive, more grounded, not in symmetry, but in story. It's easy to overlook the power of what's already underfoot. But here, the overlooked has become the highlight. And the edge of the garden, often the forgotten place, is now the place that begins everything. In this little plot of earth, the roots don't just support growth. They define beauty. At the edge of a quiet garden, where the fence draws the final line of the landscape, stand figures that seem to tell a gentle story, not of grandeur, but of grace. Totems, made not of stone or myth, but of clay. Of kendi, old pitchers, once used for pouring, now stacked like sculpted poetry. Each kendi is chosen for its shape, its history, its charm. Some carry a chip, others, a crack along the rim. But painted in pastels, butter yellow, rosewater pink, and soft sky blue, they rise like guardians of color and calm. Between each jug, a ring of creeping green. Above, small flowers spill like secrets from their open mouths. The totems line the fence, forming a rhythm in the garden's edge. They do not shout. They hum. Behind them, the fence wears white, simple and clean, a canvas that lets each color breathe. At the base, the ground glows with marigolds and asters. Sedum hugs the stone edging, thick and sturdy. This spot, once ignored, now feels like the soul of the garden, quiet, steady, inviting. It is here that the light lingers longer in the evening. Here that bees slow down, resting briefly on the rim of a painted jug. Here that a gardener sets down her gloves and simply watches. The candy totems don't pretend to be modern art. They are older than that. Their charm lies in softness, in the way form meets flower, and color meets calm. They remind us that design can be quiet, that beauty can rise from repetition, that reuse can also be reverent. As seasons change, the totems will remain. Some will fade gently, others will gain moss. But their presence will endure, because they do not exist to impress. They exist to belong. And in this tiny backyard, bordered by fence and bloom, they found their place. It stands at the edge of the garden like a memory waiting to be opened. Two doors, once part of homes long forgotten, now reborn as a gateway to something softer, quieter, more enchanted. Their wood is worn, their paint faded, but their presence is magic. These vintage doors, found in the corners of salvage yards and leaning against old sheds, now form a gate, not to keep things out, but to invite wonder in. One is sage green, the other lavender, both lightly weathered and lovingly retouched. They don't match, but they rhyme. Their handles are mismatched brass, their panels chipped like old stories. Yet together, they make something new. Flowers lean in around them, marigolds like sparks, asters like starlight, anemones like secrets in bloom. Vines wrap through keyholes and window frames. A curved stone path leads inward, not far, just enough to feel like you've stepped into something else, a garden within a garden. A pause in the world. The air feels different beyond the gate. Quieter. More curious. A bench waits beneath a fig tree. A wind chime sings softly from the pergola. And the scent of sedum and fallen leaves fills the space. This gate is not practical. It doesn't lock. It doesn't close with a snap. It swings gently, creaking like an old song. And that's the beauty of it. It doesn't need to be useful. It only needs to be loved. In tiny gardens where space is measured in steps, this kind of creativity turns limitation into luxury. A door no longer leading to rooms now leads to moments of stillness, of delight, of quiet conversation between soil and soul. Guests smile as they walk through. Children pause and ask where the path goes. Even the bees seem to circle differently around it. A secret garden gate doesn't need to hide anything. It only needs to suggest that there is always more to see, more to imagine. And here, beneath autumn's soft breath, Two forgotten doors open into a place where flowers grow louder than walls.